Welcome back to Bleav in Softball, presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Jenna, and this is officially our 175th episode in show history. We are 6 seasons in, and it just still ceases to amaze me how far that we've come. So whether you're new here or you're an OG, thank you to all of you Bleavers for tuning in. However you got here today, whether you downloaded the audio version on Apple, Spotify, etc., or you're watching video on YouTube, thank you and welcome back as always. Subscribe and rate the show wherever you get your pods. Follow us on Instagram and X at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. And yes, there's merch. Click the link in our bio on either page or go to shop.bleav.com to purchase 3 shirts available for you, covering our bases, safer out, and catch you soon. Let me know which one's your favorite. All right, let's go through today's batting order. First, we will be covering our bases. I'll share some call-outs. Then we'll head into today's interview with Savanna Collins. She's a reporter and broadcaster who's been covering pro softball for years, and she's been there with Athletes Unlimited from the beginning, and now, of course, the AUSL Championship. So excited to hear about the stories that she tells, but also including her own story. Then we'll bring it home and wrap up with some final thoughts. All right, let's go. Covering our bases. I could not be more excited to announce our new partnership with FanDuel. This is with the Bleav Network and specifically here with Bleav in Softball as well. For those who don't know, FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and it just seems like they have a little bit of almost everything when it comes to sports betting. So with the NFL preseason starting, it's about to get good this fall. They've got everything from player receiving yard props to rushing props, plus those same game parlays that let you get creative. FanDuel's SGP menu is deep and impressive, so you can really build some fun combinations around player performances and game outcomes. But of course, women's sports are our favorite around here, so dive into basketball, soccer, tennis, and more as well, because yes, we Bleav in softball, but we also Bleav in FanDuel. And we Bleav in pro softball too, and the champs are officially here. The Talons won the first ever AUSL championship. They swept the Bandits in the first 2 games of the Champ Series, and it felt very poetic to see Montana Fouts shut out the Bandits to clinch it in a triumphant return for her to Rhodes Stadium in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The game knows. But we saw huge moments from players like Tori Vidalis and Sydney Romero. And then, I felt like everywhere I looked, Charlize Palacios was throwing out runners like it was her job behind the plate this season. Good thing it is her job, kind of the point of being a pro. So fun to see her in this landscape. And I think this is a group that just peaked at the right time, and they came together quickly in just year 1 of this league. The peak viewership during the champ game on ESPN was at 347K viewers. Super exciting. And you know what? We're going to talk more about the championship and all things AUSL in today's interview. Have to give a special shout out to the 6 Bleavers who are first ever AUSL champions. Congrats to Tori, Charlize, Hannah Flippin, Megan Framo, Victoria Hayward, and Allie Aguilar. And specifically, congrats to Vic and Allie on amazing careers as well, because they enter retirement on an absolute high note. And you can catch up on Allie's interview in last week's episode for more about her story and this journey with AUSL. Some end-of-season numbers that are very promising for this league. 20 sellout crowds, over $1 million in merchandise sales, 240 million impressions on social media, and 5.3 million website views. This is exactly the momentum that you want after year 1. And we're not done yet, because the All-Star Cup starts this weekend. The individual point system is back. So instead of that being the main event for the Athletes Unlimited season, the All-Star Cup incorporates that unique AU format we've been used to supplement the regular season of the AUSL. So teams are redrafted weekly again, with the top 4 players on the leaderboard serving as captains. Series 1 team captains, Amanda Lorenz, last year's individual champion. She's from the Volts. Lexi Kilfoyle from the Bandits. Alicia Costio from the Blaze. She's won before as well. And then Georgina Korick from the championship Talons team. They've drafted their teams for gold, orange, blue, and purple, respectively. Reminder, it's August 2nd through 31st with 21 games all on the ESPN platforms. The first series is in North Carolina in conjunction with the Little League Softball World Series. The Softball World Series is in Greenville, North Carolina from August 3rd through the 10th. The youth level, we're seeing 12 teams in a couple of different brackets, 6 U.S. regions represented, and then, of course, 6 global regions as well. So what a cool way for us to see these future stars And then, of course, that crossover there with the professionals as well. And speaking of the pros, the independent teams. OKC Spark, they are your postseason champs in the independent league. They competed with the Florida Vibe and New York Rise this season, whose seasons have also now come to an end this summer. And then we're in the middle of the Professional Fast Pitch League Champ Series right now with the Orlando Monarchs and the Atlanta Smoke as we're recording this. The Smoke are back-to-back champs when the league was larger the last couple of years in the WPF, but the Monarchs actually won Game 1, so we'll see how it plays out. And in case you missed it, we talked with Kiki Malloy from the Smoke and Kat Rodriguez from the Monarchs this summer, so catch up on their episodes while they compete for a championship. On the international stage, very exciting to see the LA 2028 Olympic Games schedule released. It's going to start the second week of the games, so Sunday, July 23rd. I personally hope that means they get to go to opening ceremonies in LA, even though they are going to be in Oklahoma City to compete. The medal games are on Saturday, July 29th. They're actually one of two sports that'll be in OKC. Canoe will also be there, but softball is going to be at Devon Park, where we know it well, where the World Series is played. So go to d1softball.com for more info there. Also exciting to see an icon in USA Softball. Kelly Kretschmann is going to be inducted into the USA Softball Hall of Fame this fall. Actually, hard to believe she's not already in it. You almost assume she would be, but she's a 3-time Olympic medalist, a couple of gold and a silver. 13 years she spent playing professionally in the NPF, a few years in Japan as well. And of course, we saw her as the head coach of the Volts in this inaugural AUSL season. And so you've definitely seen her iconic mohawk, but she's really known for being a true pro. Someone else in the thick of pro softball is today's guest, so let's head into the interview. She's the AUSL reporter, sports broadcaster, and Athletes Unlimited OG, Savanna Collins. Savanna, I'm so excited that we're able to do this. I feel like I've known you forever, even though I think we've met maybe once, but
I know.
I've watched you. So true.
It's so funny. The softball world is small. We all feel like we know each other, or you're always maybe one person separated from one another.
Right? Yeah. But it's all good stuff, which is the best part. I mean, we're right in between the first ever AUSL championship and the All-Star Cup. I feel like not only are you probably tired, but you must be on cloud 9 right now at the same time.
A little bit. I feel like the AUSL season hasn't fully set in yet. I just kept having moments, and it was almost daily to where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this crowd, or oh my gosh, I can't believe that social number or viewerships. And I haven't really, I think, taken the time to take account of just how successful it was in year one. I'm sure it'll set in soon. I probably need to do some good reflection and look back, because it was really incredible. And it felt like we had highs of just wow, I can't believe this, over and over.
And a consistent strength is the content, which you're a big part of, whether it's the TV broadcasts, whether it's on social media, the digital side. You've been there since day one. I mean, you were there in 2020 when Athletes Unlimited launched with softball at the time. And now all of a sudden, 5 years later, here we are and we have the AUSL. What's it been like to witness that growth?
Oh my gosh, it's been really special. I'm really grateful for AU. I remember the day that I saw AU Pro Softball come across my Instagram feed. I was in my office with the USSSA Pride, who are part of the National Pro Fast Pitch League. And I remember saying oh my gosh, I have to work there. It looks so special. I can tell it seemed from the outside looking in, they were investing and they were excited, and that pro softball was moving in a really positive direction. And I knew, I was like, I have to get a job there. So I just banged down the door just to work there, calling in favors from players, who had signed, of just hey, just connect me to somebody. And I could have never predicted that this is where we would be in year 5. I even feel that way about pro softball in general. When people ask me, oh, is this what you saw for your career? I'm like, no. When I graduated from college, I didn't even know about pro softball, where the league was at the time. And, AU didn't exist yet. And so that's what's funny to me is I really get to work my dream job, but I couldn't even come up with this dream. And I still feel that way after the first year of the AUSL, of just wow, this is much bigger than I could have ever dreamed of.
That must be such an interesting feeling where you're like, I didn't know I had this dream, but now that it's here, it feels like you always knew, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, just to be a kid who really grew up playing sports constantly. My dad is a basketball coach. I played softball from a really young age. I played volleyball too. And so, I knew from a young age I wanted to be in sports. Like when there's that sound on TikTok that's gone viral where it's like, Maddie knew who she was from a very young age. Like, that's me. So, but what's funny is I always thought to be successful and make a living and, be really, financially and job secure, I'd have to transition to men's sports because that was the case for such a long time. And so now that's what's so special is like I couldn't have ever dreamed that I could make my career in not only women's sports, but specifically softball, a sport that I've played my whole life.
That is so cool to hear for so many reasons. Obviously, biased towards your love of softball because I have it too. But,
Yeah.
I would have to ask you then because I know that you've covered a ton of different sports and you played softball, but you played other sports too. So, what about softball specifically just kind of hooked you?
Yeah, I think, because I think about that a lot with fans right now. Like fans are constantly on my mind of just how do I get them to care? And in particular, with our partnership with MLB, with the AUSL, how do you get baseball fans to watch? And I think the really neat thing about softball is that at some point, most Americans will play a form of the sport. Maybe you play wiffle ball in the yard. It's usually something that you just get put in, whether you're going to be an athlete or not. You play t-ball. Maybe you play in like a church league or a community league. So the game is familiar to you. But I think what just makes softball so special, it's all the things we talk about. Like it's so fast, it's so exciting. The players show so much emotion. Women athletes are just so accessible. And so that has been really top of mind for me this past year of like, I know this game is great. And if people just, give it a shot, give it a watch, like you so quickly fall in love with it. And that's been really neat to hear over the past 3 months of just people finding pro softball and instantly loving it. I'm like, yeah, it's fun and it's easy to watch too.
So easy to watch. I know so many people, not to pit softball and baseball against each other. I don't want to do that. But so many people who say, like, oh my gosh, I watch more college softball than I do baseball. And then that to start transferring over to the pro side of things. Like, that's what we're hoping for, right? So it is exciting.
Yeah, I think so. And, I think there's a lot of things that softball does that MLB has spent years trying to reach. They have implemented a lot of rules to try and get to our game times. I think what's really interesting about softball is like we still play small ball. Like we saw small ball in the AUSL championship. And I think some of that is sometimes, lost in baseball. So there's a lot of ways that I think not just softball, but I feel this way about women's basketball too, that like we're still very close to like the core of the game and like what a lot of people would describe as playing the game the right way. It's interesting that women's sports is often really tapped into that, I think, in softball and basketball too.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think women's sports in particular seem to tap into that?
I wonder that as well. I think with softball, it's just there's such a really wonderful variety of ways to win. And I think some of that like comes through with like the hitting piece of you can have, you can score off of bunting, slapping, hitting for contact, and hitting for power. Sometimes I feel like baseball doesn't always have that. And you're even seeing a trend. I was reading an article this week about how like some aspects of baseball are proving that like good hitting actually beats good pitching, which is still not the case. I feel like in softball, I think the Talons prove that pitching right now still beats good hitting. And so it's funny. And I even feel that way about women's basketball. And on that side, to go down a total tangent is like, you can't in women's basketball, because obviously we have AU Pro basketball, which is super entertaining, and I watch a lot of WNBA. You can't just like out athleticize all the time. So you
Yeah.
have to be, you can't just be so much bigger, stronger, faster than everybody else. There's definitely those athletes, but you have to play with strategy. You have to play in running sets, and I could just go on. I just love women's sports, and we're just so true to like what makes the game entertaining, and then you add on the layer of how fun and funny and interesting and multifaceted women are, and then you put them in an athlete setting and you just get these incredible stories. I love women's sports so clearly.
Well, you're in the right place. This is why we love
Right?
having you.
Yeah. Where it's
Yes.
meant to be.
You're reminding me too. It makes me think of volleyball. Because as
Mhm.
I've started to cover women's volleyball and men's volleyball, it is a little bit different, right? There's a little bit more pure
Mhm.
power, pure strength in the men's side. And on the women's side, there is more of that strategy and a little bit different, right? And it's different to
Mhm.
watch in that way. So when you kind of think about that across different sports, it does make sense. We are a little bit different than the men, and I think it shines right now and is starting to shine even brighter for women's sports.
Totally agree.
Yeah. But I know you said that you also knew that you were passionate about the media space when you were young. How
Mhm.
did you discover that passion, especially at such a young age?
Oh man, gosh, this story. So I grew up, I'm from Polk County, Florida. I grew up in Lakeland. And in our county, there was a really big initiative for like what we called like ITV, which was like TV morning shows in elementary, middle, and high schools. So when I was in elementary school, they would let like third graders say the pledge, like once you get to third grade. And I would show up at the door and like knock because I wanted to say the pledge that day. And then in fourth grade, like they let me be the weather girl. And then by fifth grade, I was an anchor. And so I was like doing elementary TV news. I felt like it was very high production for an elementary school.
It sounds like
And
it.
it was like our librarian put it on, Mrs. Shields. She was wonderful. Like she was truly the start of my TV career. And I just really liked that. And then I continued it in middle school. And then I got to high school, and this is where like the big sports fandom comes out. So like if you've ever seen the movie Friday Night Lights, I went to that high school. Like we had a turf field, a humongous jumbotron. There was a live broadcast of high school football games. If you're from Florida, you get it. Like it's just crazy. And so in that, as a student, you could, find different paths to be a part of the football broadcasts. And I had done TV. I was like, hey, like, can I like be a reporter maybe and do this? Or like, yeah, go ahead. And so my freshman year, I remember sidelining my first game ever. And I remember when that like light came on, my mom was like, how'd you do? What'd you think? And I was like, that's what I want to do the rest of my life. Whatever that was, I want it. I want to feel that way all the time. And so then it was kind of just discovering like, how do you get a degree in that? At the time that was like 2010, and you're starting to see the rise of some women's sports personalities. And so I was very much down that path, and that's how I found it, which is so crazy. And being a coach's kid and playing sports most of my life has lent me well because, I enjoy writing and reading and talking clearly. And, combining those two things was what I wanted to do.
I love how young you were able to get experience. Like to be
Right?
exposed
Crazy.
at that age, that's so
Mhm.
cool. That's so
It's
cool.
very strange, and I talk to people about that a lot where I was like, it's very odd that like at a very young age I knew. It has made some parts of my life easy because there's been this very clear path to like go down. I haven't had to discover like what am I good at? What do I want to do for a living? Like I got to try it and do it. And so that's how I knew I wanted to go to Florida, and I knew what I needed to do to get here. It's just so funny because like once I graduated, the path was just so wild and not what I expected. So it's just funny how that works out. But I'm glad it brought me to pro softball.
Yes. And honestly, it makes me think of so Stanford baseball and softball do this where they have a kid announcer on the PA at least
Yeah.
once every game, so announcing who's batting for the whole inning or the whole half inning. And now I'm thinking of those kids and I'm like, what if they're discovering that this is what they really love to do the way that you did? Because usually it is
Isn't that
somebody
crazy?
who plays sports. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I think about that too. Like, man, you just never know when that like one little niche thing that you maybe get to do or try kind of sends you down a path of interest. And so I try to be, whenever I like meet people at games, or if any like young people ever like shout at me or ask for advice, like, I tell them I'm like, try different things because it will help you figure out like maybe where you're gonna want to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. It is enviable for a lot of people that you kind of knew because it does make some things
Yeah.
easier. You know what you're pursuing. It makes some things harder
Hmm.
too because you're like, but this is it. This is what I want to do. And not everything is
Yeah.
easy about it.
Totally. And I'm really grateful that like I had a set of parents that like fully believed in the dream to where like by the time I was consistently sideline reporting in high school, they were like, you're going to be on ESPN. Like that was like spoken over me and to me to where, I didn't have the, maybe how some people hear like, oh, do you really want to go to Florida and get a journalism degree? Especially because at the time everybody said like journalism is dying. I'm like, whatever. Like being a storyteller, I think is one of the most valuable things to be right now. And so they very much spoke to me and about me and my dreams as not only being achievable, but to like dream big, dream big, dream big, which I'm very grateful for because that support was so important for me.
We've had people on the show talk about wanting to play on ESPN someday, be on ESPN as a player. But this
Mm-hmm.
this is important, I think, because it's not just about playing. You did play as a kid, which is wonderful, but you had other dreams within sports and you wanted
Totally.
to be on that stage too and you got to be there. So just reminder for everyone too that there's different paths you can take within sports.
Yeah, absolutely. And I knew like, I was probably a sophomore in high school and been playing travel ball competitively. And I remember at the time, my dad saying to me, he was like, hey, you got to really commit to travel ball this year if you want to play in college. Like, and he was very realistic with me. And he was like, you can play at a certain level and based on your size and your stats and kind of where you're at, like, let's just be realistic. And so he was like, let's play this summer and see what comes of it. And then you decide what you want to do. And so I did that and kind of the summer ended and he was like, where were you at? And I'm like, I love softball. I love sports. And I was like, but I am not going pro in this. Like, and I knew that and that's okay. And I was like, I want to go to school and be the best reporter possible because that I can go pro in. And I like knew that and felt that. I was like, I'm not going to go pro as a player, but I can go pro as a reporter if I want to. And so that was so important because like all my sports experiences to me, regardless of whether I played in college or not, and I didn't, were valuable because it led me here, which, is just as great.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And I know you talked about too, we love women's sports. That's what our passion is. But covering men's sports too. It's an interesting kind of balance because how cool is it that we can elevate women's sports and cover it, but also there's this element of well, we can break barriers and cover men's sports as women as well.
Totally.
So it's like
Yeah.
how have you balanced those two things?
Yeah, it's funny. In college, I was, very much all in on the men's sports side and became very accustomed to being one of maybe two, max three women in a room. And so, and I forget what that feels like at times because I've been in women's sports so long. So I covered Gator football for 3 years, and then I covered Gator baseball in our national championship, which were some different experiences because, my football IQ, that was not something that was really high, but like my baseball IQ, I was, very committed to. I took internships in that because at the time I thought I wanted to be a Major League Baseball reporter. And so having that experience of like really having to prove myself constantly that like not only I belong there, but that I should be there and that how I represented myself was in some ways going to be representative of any women who stepped in that space before or after me. I took that like super seriously in college. I was way too serious all the time, but that's a
Same.
whole other thing. I was just so serious about it. But it's funny because now I take some of those skill set and I use them in softball, and they're really invaluable to me because, I didn't play at a high level, but I'll be darned if I am not the best studier in a stadium at any given time. Like I know the AUSL head coaches, they probably had to be so sick of me because I'd be like, okay, coach, like let me give you a scenario and you talk me through this. Why did you do this? Why did you go here? But it's from working in men's that I really picked up that skill set of just like, I'm going to earn my spot, whether you think I should have it or not. And it's just been interesting. I do still enjoy covering men's sports. I do a little bit of college football and basketball and baseball throughout the year, which is a blast. I love doing that. But it is very different and you have different approaches. I will say that like being in women's sports, like it's so much, a little bit more friendships than I have in men's, which is funny. Like when I'm around the AUSL girls, like those are my girls, like we're buds in covering them. And it's different. It's created some really special relationships that I really value.
Women in sports, right? There's always going to be that thing that you can relate to with each other.
Yeah. And we just have fun, I just think we have more fun.
Yeah. There is, in my experience, I would love to hear if you've experienced this, a level of gratitude. You mentioned how accessible women athletes are. And I've noticed that difference too, where, they're still trying to push for more. So they're finding that balance too. But there is this level of like, yes, we're all in this to elevate the sport. There is that bigger picture that seems to be always in the back of their mind.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, it's very interesting to me, especially right now when I think about the AUSL, like I am experiencing history in real time, which is once you get that existential, it gets to be a lot. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to be in my 70s talking about when I was in Tuscaloosa for the first AUSL championship? And the answer to that is yes. And so our history is shorter and we are much closer to our legends. So like, in men's sports, like I think about MLB, they've got 100-year start on us, we're in year one. Obviously,
Right.
we've had some leagues that have paved the way to help us get to now, but AUSL is in year one. And so it does create this really wonderful dynamic, I think, between current players that they are very aware of their history, and sometimes their history is around them. And the people who come to mind, it's like Kelly Kretschmann and Stacey Newman Denise being head coaches, and Lisa Fernandez being a GM, and they are around figures in their sport every day. And so that's really neat to me, that we're not far removed from like our trailblazers, getting to talk to Connie Clausen in Omaha and what she was able to do at the University of Omaha, starting the women's softball team. And she and I getting to have a conversation. That to me is what kind of feeds into that. Like, wow, like not only do I owe this and have, I think, sometimes a duty to push this forward, I personally know the people who did it when it was way harder. And one day these players will be those same people. They will be talked about in that same way, because they made sacrifices, because they had 3 jobs. Even just in the couple years I've been in pro softball, pre-AU and now, like things have changed. And I think if you keep a really wonderful mindset of not being bitter that you didn't get the best circumstance, but instead like being someone who pushes for better, it keeps you in a really wonderful mindset of like balancing like gratefulness and also pushing for like things to progress, which can be hard to balance. But I think that's really wonderful.
Yes. Gosh, everything you're saying, I'm like, yep, just resonates in my soul.
This is my audience right here, man.
It's true.
This is my target audience.
You're so right. Which is why we're so looking forward to this, because I knew, well, I've seen you, first of all, like in action, but also just your presence that you've had with the players, with the coaches, and just covering Athletes Unlimited that I've seen. There seems to just be this level of authenticity, and I feel like that comes through in your coverage. So I'm not surprised to hear it come through right now.
Oh, thank you. That's like probably one of the best compliments you could give me. So I appreciate hearing that.
The relationship building too. I mean, obviously, like there's a journalistic aspect, right? Where we are covering these players and coaches and teams. So you have to have some level of being objective in that regard. But at the same time, how do you even get the stories out of these people? It's like, well, there's a relationship there. They're people, right? They're not just subjects, if you will. I just feel like you do a really nice job of that.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. I think, when you kind of count, and I think about this a lot, like in this job of like, what are your skills? Like, what's your like high value stuff? And like for me, like that's something I take a lot of pride in is like, maybe when you think about like the mindset of like trying to in some ways become like irreplaceable, like you want to be irreplaceable in what you do. I was in college when it was Stephen A. Smith of all people gave a talk about becoming irreplaceable in a job. And they say everybody is replaceable, but I definitely have taken that of like, okay, what are my things that if I wasn't here that you would maybe have a hard time creating or would take a long time to find again. And for me, it's the relationship building and the trust and, being someone that can be a little bit closer, probably the most, and being a league reporter, because and over time, that builds, I think now in pro softball, something that it rides on is just time. It's my first job was with the Pride. There are some players that I was a rookie in my job with who were also rookies. I was talking to my mom about this on the plane, and I said, you know what? I think I have seen almost every single one of Amanda Lorenz's career at bats as a pro. I was there. Like, and that's like wild to me. And so, some of that is time, some of that is diligence, but then a big part of it is just like how you treat people and, not getting caught up in the busyness of the job, but like really letting people feel seen. And to kind of go down another women's sports tangent, I remember when I was at the Pride, I just was like writing stories and doing broadcast stuff and like working on things. And I had this feeling and this weight on me at all times where I was like, if I don't tell this story, no one will tell it, because often I was the only reporter in the room and like almost all season. So that came with like a lot of like heaviness of just like, I felt a lot of pressure. And then I got to AU and the room started to get a little bit bigger, which was exciting. And then, now in the AUSL, the room is beginning to feel more full. Um, so that to me has been something that I've carried with me a lot in pro softball, where I was like, if I don't go write this feature about this player who maybe played at a mid-major or was somebody on a team who didn't get a ton of press and PR, especially before like the major outlets started covering softball the way they have in the last 5-ish years, maybe someone will never ask her about that. And so that was just something that I thought about a lot in my career. And it's been a lot of fuel for me of, I have a duty to like be a storyteller and like a megaphone and a writer and a mouthpiece for these players, especially the ones that maybe haven't gotten what maybe they should have. So I think that's been a big driver for me in that like storytelling, trust, and relationships aspect.
I couldn't agree more with feeling this level of responsibility. Like it's a privilege, it's a responsibility, and I too am a little too serious, or at least used to be sometimes about it. And so you do put that pressure on yourself. But
Mm-hmm.
you think about that with broadcasts as well. It's like these are some of the biggest moments in these
Mm-hmm.
players, whether it's college or pro, in these players' lives, at least when it comes to their playing days. And you're a part of telling that story. Like that's, in my view, a big deal. So the way that you're describing this, it makes total sense to me.
Yeah, it is definitely not lost on me. And it's exciting too to like get to do that on a day to day, and I really enjoy it. And I'm like grateful to be there too, of just like sometimes working in the job that like you got to explain what it is. I'm still there. I cannot wait till I'm just like, oh, I work in pro softball and people immediately know what I'm talking about. So I know I still have a ways to go. But that is exciting and it's neat too. And I'm sure you can feel this. Like I was telling Kim Ing, I was like, I felt like a lot of times in pro softball, I was like tweeting or sending stuff out there. And I had this feeling where I was like yelling into an abyss of like, is anybody out there? Is anybody listening? And I felt like this year I turned around and I was like, oh my God, where do all these people come from? And I'm so excited that they're there. And that's a new feeling. And it's such a cool one to get to start to experience.
Gosh, that's so true. It's so true. My biggest pet peeve would be when people would be like, well, there's no pro softball, right? So it's all, and I'm like, no, 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 there is. There is. Even before
Right.
AU, right? You have to
Mm-hmm.
explain. But
Right.
now I think, like you said too, with the MLB backing AUSL, so you wanted to be an MLB reporter, and here that tie is now later. And it may be a slightly different way than you thought, but here
Yeah.
it is, right? Like there are certain things like that where had you not been and people like you yelling into what felt like the abyss, all these people wouldn't have showed up now, right? It just the delayed gratification sometimes.
Crazy. So crazy.
Yeah. And looking at the AUSL this season, this is kind of a loaded question because you could give so many answers, but what are your biggest takeaways for you personally and then just for the league, pro softball in general?
Man, I mean, the one that comes to mind, and I think that was the most visibly obvious, was the crowds. Gosh, I just, wow. Like, I would be on field and kind of like turn and look. And this would happen just about every series. I'm just like, there's so many people here. And I think, too, you wonder if people will show up because people talk a big game about what they want, what they wish they could see on social media, especially. And I'm like, yeah, but will you guys buy tickets and come? And we start this league, and in your mind, you're excited and you believe in it. I've always believed in it, but I just didn't know that in year one, that many people would believe in it too and spend their money and their time to come experience it. That to me blew my mind. Um, and then two, like the MLB partnership still is just wild. Like we are just scratching the surface of that and what it's going to mean and be for our sport. But us being together in that is huge. It's something that I think pro softball has needed. It adds a level of like validity that we've never had to have one of the oldest pro sports leagues in the United States, partner with you. That's just huge. And we didn't really, I didn't see that one coming. I remember when Kim Eng became one of our senior advisors and then over time became our commissioner. And I was just like, wow, you've got this great, fearless like leader of this league. But MLB coming in and putting their stamp on everything, I think has been really neat. Did not expect that in year one. Those are the two where I was just like, this doesn't feel real.
Even just looking at the content, seeing MLB post about AUSL and post about
Yeah,
softball. For me, yeah, it was a double take as well. I'm like, oh gosh, like because we've known this is an opportunity, we've known that we've wanted this, but to actually see it happen is a whole other story.
totally. You know what's neat too about them posting about us? And this to me was an interesting litmus test of like, I knew they were going to start posting about us. And my biggest concern was I hope that the players and our social team do not become inundated in the comment section with like nastiness,
Yeah.
essentially. And take whatever form of that you want. If on any women's sports post, it's usually in there.
Yep.
And so I kind of like braced for that of, here's this predominantly male audience and, following, how are they going to receive it? And is it just going to be one like, you know, get back in the kitchen or like objectification after another? And what has been so fascinating is if one of those people kind of pops up in the comments, this reverse thing has been happening where the rest of everybody else like shuts it down. Like I remember in the first couple weeks of like the MLB and AUSL partnership, people would say like, who even watches this? Or like, nobody wanted this. And then there'd be like 10 people and that person replies like jumping them like, get on board or get out of the comments or like, we want this. Like, this is MLB's new partner. Like, pro softball's like, and I was just like, whoa, you know, watching that shift in real time in an IG comment section has been really fun and neat and not something I expected either. And so that has been funny to me. And so now it's kind of nice sometimes to just like go in and look and like see some like defenders. And now those comments, I think, starting to happen less often. That was just wild to me this season.
Yeah, it's so true. It's almost guaranteed, you're right, typically to see stuff like that. And athletes in other sports will defend themselves or their friends or whatever, but then you have fans defending softball players. That
Yeah.
it is very It's a little mind blowing in a good way.
And they're like in there. They're like ready
Yeah.
to tussle in the comments.
Yeah. But to see the environment, even through TV, at these games, you can understand why. Like, people are so
Mhm.
excited. They're selling out. Like you said, what is it, 20 sellouts in the season this year in year one? And that's in totally different places across the country, some with larger than average capacity, depending on where they were playing, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's incredible. So to see that sort of in person and then also online is
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, I agree. I like have been so appreciative to pro softball fans. Like they've very supportive and they've shown up and they've been vocal about wanting teams and where they want them and that, vocal to the point where they're like mad that they didn't get a team near them. And I'm like,
Yeah.
honestly, like I feel for you, but that's kind of great. Like that's good. That means we're in demand.
Hmm.
So that's a good feeling too. You're not going to make everybody happy. Like we don't have 32 teams in the league yet. We got 4 and next
Right.
year we'll have 6. And so that's been really funny to kind of watch of people like wanting that demand, which is good. It's good for softball.
Totally. I've also seen people giving some analysis and opinions about ball, right? Like, not so it's less of a conversation of like, do these women allow or do they have the right to be here? And more of a conversation about like, well, I think they should throw so and so because she's been doing really well in this situation, and this team needs to start hitting better at this portion of the lineup, or something. That's how they talk about men's sports. And
Yeah,
that is now how they're starting to talk about women's sports.
totally. That level of critique to me is good. And I think that that might be an adjustment for, I think, softball in general of like, I think until part of the like wanting it to feel like men's is there's a level of critique that comes with that. Some I think some of it is not good, and I think some of it is. Like I've had to do that more this season than ever of just going like, this isn't working. Why? Or why did this team not win or play well or have a good record, and having to be honest about that. And I think you can always do that from a point of like fairness with a layer of kindness, but also being like critical. And it's neat to start to see that because we need that. Like that's what moves the sport forward and better and makes people more accountable and drives a lot of viewership.
Yeah.
Because people want to watch.
Right. How do you think the teams, all of them this season, just handled basically transitioning, going back to the traditional format, having the fan bases, like getting back to that format that we're used to with the MLB, for example?
Yeah, I think it was very welcomed. I mean, especially in the first month or so, I just heard that so overwhelmingly from the players of how excited they were to be on a team and to be coached again. I think to hear that from Montana Fouts in her championship interview right after she won, throwing a complete game shutout. What? I'm still not over that. And her to say, like, I, you know, went to Alabama, she bleeds it. And her to say, like, I never thought I would experience like family and team and buy in like I did in college ever again. And honestly, that's fair. Like I can totally understand never thinking you'll find that again. And for her to say, I found it not only in the AUSL, but I found it in year 1 with the Talons in a team that only played 24 games. Like that to me speaks volumes. Like to me, Montana is just one of the more ultimate team players. And for her to feel that level of camaraderie, again, in a team that does not have a home city, does not have a home crowd, who didn't play at a lot of venues where it was Talons heavy, like that just speaks to the level of coaching, the like brilliance of GMs, and then also just like who these players are and like what they can do in that setting. So that was tremendously exciting for me. And I think we saw the best pro softball we've seen in 5 years. Like I will stand on that. Like what we got to watch this summer was great because the players were well coached, instructed in film every day, talking strategy. Like they wanted to be in that championship game. And it's why the product was so good. We got to have it. Like we have to have it.
some of the best players talking about wanting to be coached, I think is such a good learning point for young players, young athletes, men or girls or boys, right? Because it's like just because you're really good at something, you can always be better. You want to have that confidence, but you don't ever want to stop learning. And I feel like we did see that from these athletes this year as well. Of course, the past years with the individual points and things and what we're going to see in the All-Star Cup is super exciting and cool to see. But I think just the team aspect being put into it made that even next level, it seemed like.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many examples of players who had like breakthrough moments or did things for the first time this season. Like one that comes to mind is Coach Dobson was big on a lot of different hitting philosophies. Like he is such a guru in a lot of ways, but like one of the things that Tori Vidalis, who I consider, one of the best hitters consistently in pro softball, had never been shown this philosophy of like hitting through windows. That was something that the Talons did a lot of. To me, to be learning about this in real time from Coach Dobson and Hannah Flippen, who had both done it, and it was something that they had experienced a lot. And for Tori to be like, this is new to me. Like, I'm buying into this. I like this. And I'm like, you can get better? Like, how is that even possible that you can get better? And it happened in a lot of different ways. Like we saw pitchers throwing new pitches, changing mechanics, like doing things for the first time. And it's like, wow, like I can't wait to see how good this gets, because I thought it was great the past 5 years, but I think this season showed that like we have not reached our ceiling. We're not even close.
Which is a good thing. Um,
Yeah,
Exciting. Yeah.
absolutely exciting. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Speaking of the champs, obviously we're talking about the Talons because they
Hmm.
are the first ever. And there's something so special about being the first. There just really
Totally.
is. What else do you think put them in the position to do what they did? What made them special?
Yeah, I think I was thinking on this morning of just like looking at how they drafted in the inaugural draft. And where they got certain players who ended up being some really high value impact players. And I want to go back and look of like, where did they draft Caroline Jacobson and the impact that she had on that team? And, they went for pitchers first. That was their big priority, and that ended up paying off. The way that they used their staff and then were able to just like bring people in and balance and create matchups. And, they also did really well in the college draft, like picking up Sierra Sacco and the impact that she had as a hitter, oftentimes in the leadoff spot, and then Raylan Chafin, like to be one of the better rookie pitchers in the league. She was in the running for me at some points of the season to be rookie of the year. And they just really nailed some of that. But I think like the baseline was obviously pitching. To have the best pitching staff in the league, you're going to win a majority of games. But their defense was particularly crisp. You had the defensive player of the year at shortstop and Hannah Flippen. Um, but then you had some other pieces that just like they didn't make a lot of mistakes. So they didn't lose momentum very often. And then situationally, I thought they were one of the better teams when it came to hitting. Like, I mean, they didn't always put up, I mean, sometimes they were out hit in won games. And I think that spoke a lot to the way that team was just coached and bought in. And Hannah really, really put it into context for me about the midway point in the season. We were in Omaha, and she just said, like, when I see somebody on second base, it to me is an automatic that they're going to score. If they're on second, we're scoring. And that was neat that she had that much confidence. And she goes, and it doesn't have to be me. And she goes, so I have no pressure. And so that kind of atmosphere was an intangible of that team that you really didn't get to see and hear unless you're in the dugout. That was why they had those kind of results. And I think they peaked at the right time too. Like they went through some struggles and rough patches, but by the time they hit that second half of the season, I mean, they were dialed and cruising. And I almost have a hard time picking like an MVP of that team because it was everybody, like on different nights, like in the championship, it was, it was Sydney Romero. And then, Tori Vidalis had her first home run since opening day. And then in other times of the season, it was Hannah Flippin. It was Ali Aguilar with a walk-off. It was Jalen Alchin who, came in with some key RBIs and hits. So like that just really stands out to me of just like, man, nobody had to carry the load and the pressure of that team. They were so well balanced. And in the end, it helped them beat what had been the most productive offensive team in the league, which is interesting. Because I didn't expect a sweep by any means. When people ask me, what's your prediction? And I'm like, my only prediction is that it goes to three. And that wasn't the case. That really shocked me.
Yeah. I mean, you're right about the peaking at the right time. We talk about that in college, about the NCAA tournament, the World Series, etc. But this is a shorter season in this case, but still applies. Like the Bandits had the best start. They were leading everything in the halfway point. They had the first, what felt like in every milestone for the AUSL.
Yes.
But then the Talons brought it together, right? And that's, again, the team aspect and some of those intangibles that go into that. Even people, these teams utilizing people from the talent pool, coming in and out. If people are on the injured list, like a Jalen Alchin becoming somebody who is a big impact. It was just really cool to see just real pros. They've always been professionals in how they play, but the franchises, or what will be franchises soon, the teams, everything just felt so professional.
Yeah. I think what's neat too is like, I didn't expect after year one to have a clear idea of like what it means to be a Talon. And I'll say of what it means to be a Bandit too. I will say that about both those two championship teams. If you ask me what are the qualities and what does it look like to be on those two teams, they had some big time principles that were preached and talked about on a day-to-day basis. They're also the two teams that I traveled the most with. So I got to know them the best. And so that to me says a lot. Like I didn't think I would know that in year one, but I definitely knew, which makes the expansion draft a little sad. Because there's gonna be some shakeup in the league. Yeah.
It's true, and that's where it gets interesting, or it can get a little spicy, right? And where fans like they might be invested into individual players, but now they're invested in teams too, and these are problems that MLB fans have sometimes when there's trades and things like that.
Oh gosh!
And now we're seeing
been there.
Yeah,
been there. When the Rays have traded some of my favorite players, I'm just like, oh my God, it's painful. It's so painful.
Listen, I'm an Angels fan.
It is a part of sports. Oh, God.
It is. So yeah, losing Shohei Ohtani, I mean, come on. You lose Showtime. Oh, yes. But to see that now, and again, on the women's side, though, is cool that that's even, it's a good problem to have in some ways as fans.
That's a perfect way to say it. We have some good problems to have starting and coming soon.
Yes. Because there's talent on every single team. So it was interesting to me. Like, I think if I remember right, you graded the drafts, right? For the initial drafts for each team. Which, hey, I get doing rankings, for example, during the college season. I'm like, I'm so stressed. But I was with you. I think you gave the Volts like an A+ in their draft, right? And I was like, I was very impressed with their draft. And then I don't think that the win column was what they expected, right? A sub 500 season, for example. So it's interesting. It's like, it's so much more than just the talent. It's how everyone fits together. It's like, do these women come together just from a camaraderie perspective? Like there's so many different factors that go into it, and you get to tell those stories, which is so cool.
Totally. It's cool. It's stressful. I got some things wrong, and I will like fully admit that. Learned a lot this past season. What comes to mind is like they did a video for the the Bandits like championship series, and had a voiceover by Skylar, and our video team had written it, and they were just like, hey, what do you think of the script? And one of the things in the script was kind of like this theme of like a they who didn't believe in them. And I was like, who is that about? Like, you. And I was like, And they were like, yeah, like your draft grade of them was like kind of low. And I was like, wow. I was like, I guess I was the hater, but I was like, and then I kind of was like, but like, this is why I said, and they're like, Sandra, we're not saying you weren't wrong or didn't make an informed opinion. But like looking back on the season, that wasn't always what people predicted or how the people thought the season would go. So again, another one of those like good problems to have because I was like, so awful, but like kind of awesome at the same time. I just wish it wasn't about me.
But you know what? I don't love being wrong, but I don't mind it for that reason. I'm like, because when people overcome odds or carve their own path, like those are some of our favorite stories and favorite things to witness in sports.
Yeah.
So I'll take one on the chin for that,
Same.
and like, yeah.
That was me. That was me. And I was like, guys, I could not predict that Aaron Koffel, Sydney McKinney, and Morgan Zirkle were all going to have some of the best pieces of hitting I've ever seen in one 24-game season. I'm like, how was I supposed to predict that?
Seriously. And that's like, I love that some of it's unpredictable, right? Because otherwise,
Yeah,
like, what are we doing? If everything's chalk, that's not fun.
totally. Totally agree. So I don't know. To me, the Bandits ended up being such a great story of the season of just like, being a team that was fairly young in a lot of ways and was the only franchise that had some history.
Yeah.
And that coach Noonan Denise was the head coach of that team again, like she was in 2018. Like those were all things that just like you knew that they were stories going in, but it just got bigger and it just built. And I just think back to like some time on their team bus or like in the dugout and just kind of looking at that team and going like, man, they can be so unbeatable at times,
Yeah.
which is really special. And they're a fun group to be around too. Like they have a good time. So I enjoyed being around that team and they welcomed me in, even though my draft grade was like I think it was like a B minus. Which come
No,
on, it was just a B.
I was going to say A's and B's. Come on,
Right.
That's,
Right.
yeah. Well, before we head into our wrap up, I'm going to put you on the spot one
Okay.
time, which is who is your favorite? Like, what team is your favorite overall in terms of the names, the colors, the
Ooh.
uniforms? Like, which was your favorite to see out there?
Oh man. Okay. Colors, uniforms. I particularly love the Blaze. I love the black uni with the pink and orange highlights. Like pink and orange are also like my favorite colors. And then I love how they were a franchise who like one Blaze is like kind of abstract
Yeah.
and they really leaned in like torchy and their like celebrations and the way that they would like do their nails and their gear, like I loved seeing like what the Blaze players had going on. And I like that there was pink. Like I think pink has a place, and so I enjoyed that team and watching them, and they had some really great team chemistry too, which I think all like built into what made them really enjoyable in that way. But that's my favorite, probably one of my favorite uniforms too. I like the Bandits
Yeah.
pins as well. I'm just a sucker for pins.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Totally. Yeah, I think Jenny Finch would agree with you that pink, she's a fan
Yeah.
of the pink too. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, okay, you handled that really well, because those are hard questions to
They
answer when you
are.
cover the
They're
whole
tough.
league. But now I will wrap up with you with the game that I play with everybody who comes on. So it's called Safe or Out. And I'll bring up a topic. If you like it or you agree with it, you call it safe. If not, you call it out.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Okay. So the first one is miking up players while they're playing.
Oh my god.
Safe or out.
Is this in the field?
Yeah, like when they are in the field doing their thing.
Oh god. I think I'm out.
You've
I think
seen
I'm
it
out.
up close.
I love my home run interviews. Those are safe.
Yeah. Well, that's different. That's like after, yeah, that's different.
Yeah.
They're not like,
it's tough.
yeah, when
It
they're
does
playing
create some
third
cool
base.
moments. I think overall, like, it really stresses me out.
Yeah.
Like, like when I'm in the dugout listening to that player, like in my IFB, I'm like, oh God, like I'm like, oh
Yeah.
geez, this is crazy. They handle it really well though.
They do. They're actually, I mean, no surprise, total pros. I love as a consumer, I think it's great. But yes, as like a former player and someone like you're watching it right there in front of you, right? It's a little, I have a little bit of anxiety. Like I think Jesse
Yeah.
Warren's done it at third base. I'm like, it's the hot corner. Like whatever, what's going to happen here?
Joe
But
Rowe did it while calling a game this season.
yes.
That was wild. And she handled it so well that it literally, when you asked me that question, I was like, God, I'd generally be out. But what happened with Jordan was so cool. It like makes me want to stay safe. Okay.
Yeah. 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 I totally get that. Okay. That was the first one. Second one is the transfer portal. Safe or out?
Just general transfer portal. I think I gotta be out. I think it has its time and place, but it's just out of control.
Which is fair because I didn't say transferring safe or out, right? I said the portal, like the way it's set up is they're two different things, right? So
I'm out on that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Last one is bat flips. Safe or out?
Oh, so safe. Safe. Yeah, give me those. I wish we'd had. I know Mackenzie Clark's this season was pretty good. Would have loved to have seen maybe one or two pimped just a little bit more.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I don't know that I would ever have done it myself, but I actually, for some reason, I enjoy them more in pro than I do in college. I don't know why
I
that
like
is.
that.
Yeah, but I do.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I think it's good. I think that's what makes women's sports, in particular softball, like so fun to watch, is like their emotions are generally all over their face and they're very expressive. Like I've heard that a lot this season of like, oh my gosh, these players are just so, in a positive way, emotional. And I was like, I know, it's awesome. Like it makes it so fun.
Maybe it is because of Athletes Unlimited too, because I think with like the individual stuff in 2020 when it was the only softball on TV too, there was something about the energy it created. So yeah, I think the pro pimps.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Fun.
I like I like a big celly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you again, Savanna. This was great. I mean, it's been so fun watching you. I can't believe it's been 5 years of Athletes Unlimited. So it feels like it's been a while, but also year one of AUSL, and can't wait to see everything you and the league do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for covering us and giving us your time and energy and being at games and writing articles. Like, it makes me better having other outlets and people to read and learn from. It's so valuable. And thanks for letting me come tell some of my story. I so often do that with others. So it's neat sometimes to have to be on the other side of that. It was fun.
Yeah, I love putting the pressure on you.
I'll take it. Those safer outs were hard.
I know. But you did well.
I like it though. It was fun.
Savanna's in such a cool position. Just as somebody who tells other people's stories, covering sports, she has great insight. But there's also a lot of value hearing about her own story as a woman in sports and how she got where she is today. So I walked away from this conversation feeling energized about the future of the AUSL, softball, and women's sports in general. So I hope you did too. With that, let's bring it home. You've been listening to Bleav in Softball, part of Bleav Network, presented by FanDuel. The show is available anywhere you get your podcasts, wherever you listen, including Bleav.com and YouTube too. Subscribe to the show, rate the show if you liked it, write a review. Follow us on X and Instagram at Bleav in Softball. Again, that's BLEAV. You can reach out to me personally on X at Jenna Becerra01 and Instagram at Jenna Becerra as well. As always, thank you for tuning in and catch you soon.